we have very different medical systems in our two countries, seemingly, in the US and the UK.
Sure.
But this propaganda, as you call it, has been widespread worldwide, right? So
Oh, yeah.
what is at the root of that?
Yeah. So you ready to know what it is?
Go
Shut up.
on.
What's the root of that? In 2016, this is all you need to know, actually. In 2016, Tel Aviv University in Israel conducted a study, 500,000 patients in 49 countries. It was the largest study ever done on high blood pressure. And they found 49 countries, 500,000 people, that the individuals who consumed the most salt every single day had the best blood pressure readings and the most normal blood pressure readings. And all the individuals who consumed 3 times the amount the FDA tells you you should consume salt every day, every person around the world that consumed 3 times that amount had better blood pressure readings than anybody
Okay.
who took the FDA readings. Now, they publish in the Lancet in the UK where you are. The
Mm.
Lancet is a medical journal. They publish the results of the study that the more salt someone consumes, the better their blood pressure is and the lower their risk factors for stroke and heart attack become. When you just asked me why and who benefits from this lie, why would they tell us this lie? Did you see that when that was published by the Lancet, did you see who threatened the Lancet with pulling their funding if they publish that study and don't retract it?
No.
The American Heart Association threatened the Lancet and told them, you publish that study, we're going to pull all of your funding. You have to retract that study. All right, so the next question for you is, why would the American Heart Association be angry at a medical journal for publishing a study,
Right.
largest one ever done in history, proving that salt intake, the more salt you eat, the lower your risk factor for high blood pressure, strokes, and heart attacks is? Why is that a threat to the American Heart Association? Which, by the way, is the highest revenuing medical association in the whole world.
What?
Why would the American Heart Association threaten the actual medical journal with their publishing of that study if they don't retract it? What's the threat to the American Heart Association if that truth was to get out?
Tell me.
The American Heart Association's 90% of all their funding comes from the pharmaceutical industry, the
Right.
drug makers of high blood pressure drugs and stroke drugs and heart attack drugs. So if the majority of their funding comes to them from high blood pressure drug manufacturers like Merck, Pfizer, and others, of course they're going to see this journal as a threat and this article as a threat, because if people started eating more salt in their diet and they read that study and medical doctors got a hold of that information and that truth, they would start telling their patients to eat more salt. Well, does Pfizer own salt companies? Not that I'm aware of. Does Merck own salt companies? Not that I'm aware of. But even if they did, salt is cheap and it's a natural resource that you can't patent typically unless you change its formula. So this was the ultimate threat to the American Heart Association is it will reduce sales in high blood pressure medications, stroke medications, and heart disease medications. If the truth gets out that salt in increased amounts than what the governments are telling us will reduce our risk of heart attacks and strokes. So who did the lie benefit the most to tell all of society that salt is bad for you and lower your salt intake? Who did it benefit from the
Right.
beginning?
Terrifying. The
It's the drug
pharmaceuticals.
companies.
Yeah.
The drug companies that make the high blood pressure drugs. Okay, so this is no different, and we're not going to stick on this topic. But in
Mm-mm.
order to convince people that fat was bad for them,
Right.
the drug companies had to lie to medical doctors and in scientific journals and tell them all that when human beings swallow anything with fat in it, their liver will convert that fat into cholesterol. And we have found that cholesterol, as it builds up in your blood, increases the risk of plaque, blood clots, strokes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Now, who was telling the medical doctors this? Oh, it just happened to be the same drug companies that just created a drug called statins that they figured out in animal studies lowers the amount of cholesterol the liver can make. Okay, this is fun. So once they figured out they had a chemical that actually did in every single mammal they put it inside of it, lowered this thing called cholesterol, then the drug companies had to come up with a way to convince all the medical doctors to promote their drug that lowers cholesterol. Well, what's the best way to sell it to them? Tell them that the number one cause of death around the world, typically, which is heart disease, is increased in risk by increased cholesterol. And so if you just tell the medical doctors that lie,